من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. During the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had a number of wives. One being Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, others Khadija radiallahu anha, Sawda, Salama, and so on and so forth. Once the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I believe he was in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha, and Sawda, who was also the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she was in their presence, and the Prophet and Aisha radiallahu anha, she cooked a dish or not called harira, a porridge or pudding. She cooked for a porridge, a pudding for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Sawda was with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and with Aisha, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu was sitting in between them. So he was in the middle, and Aisha was on the right or left, and Sawda was on the right or left. And Aisha said, you know, I've cooked porridge or pudding, and she insisted that Sawda eats their pudding or porridge. But unfortunately, Sawda radiallahu anha, she did not want to eat the porridge. Aisha radiallahu anha, she kept on insisting, and she said, if you do not eat, then I will, you know, shove it inside your mouth, in other words. So she kept on, you know, saying, I don't want it. What happened? And Aisha radiallahu anha, she took the porridge and she smeared it all over the face of Sawda radiallahu ta'ala anha. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he began to laugh and he began to smile. And you know, they wanted to have a food fight, really. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he stopped them. Another occasion, similar occasion, Sawda radiallahu anha said, you know, we were once eating, and Aisha radiallahu anha, she threw some food at me, and and the Prophet Muhammad said to me, and Sawda is saying, why don't you throw food at Aisha also? And then our Umar al-Khattab was coming, and they stopped because they were scared of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anha. The main, obviously, moral of the story is not to encourage you to have food fights with your spouses, with your husband and wife. The main moral or the lesson that we can take from the story is that the human aspect of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a prophet, was a messenger, but he was also a man. He was also a husband. He was the best husband. And we as Muslims, we follow in the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when it comes to how we interact with our spouses, how we interact with our husbands and wives and children, and so on and so forth. And there are many narrations, many stories like this. Another occasion, we know a famous story where Aisha radiallahu anha and the Prophet Muhammad sallam, they would race. They would race outside in the streets of Medina. In the early days, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam lost to Aisha. Later on in Medina, when Aisha radiallahu anha gained some weight, they had a race, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam beat Aisha radiallahu anha. He said, yeah, Aisha, this is for the time you beat me previously. Can you imagine? This was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was our mother Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Just imagine for a moment, for a second, a local imam racing with his wife outside. How would we perceive those people? We would say, astaghfirullah, a'udhu billah. We would go to the mosques and say, you know, we demand him to be stripped of his imamship, and he needs to be in prison, he needs to be sent back home, he needs to be this, do that. But this was the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam showing us how we should behave. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best of role models. Doesn't really, and this is how we should be with our family members. Sometimes a marriage can be very, very dry. A marriage can be just go out, 9 to 5 job, you come back at your house, your wife cooks the food, and there's nothing special. What Islam teaches us is that we need to create special moments. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam created special moments for his spouses. And they actually remembered those moments. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was if you want to use that word, a romantic prophet, a romantic man. He used certain moments, certain occasions to lift up the spirits of his spouses. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we follow him in his, you know, in terms of his risala message, but we also follow him as a man, because he was the best. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. He was the best of creation. His guidance was comprehensive. So, if we see certain things, even with our scholars, among our Mawlanas and Imams, know that they have some precedents. They have some hadith or sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad that they're following. If they joke with their wives, they joke outside, if they are doing certain things, we should not say this person is away from the sunnah, this person is this or that, label them and so on and so forth. Otherwise, we have to label the Prophet Muhammad. We have to say the Prophet Muhammad was extreme, the Prophet Muhammad was this or that. And the Prophet Muhammad, he allowed food fights between his wives. He allowed food fights between his wives. He allowed so many things. He allowed Aisha radiallahu anha in the house, in the mosque of the Prophet Muhammad, for her to, watch the Ethiopians, practicing there with their spears and many other things. So we have to also do what the Prophet Muhammad said. Also, in our day-to-day conduct with our spouses, with our husbands, with our wives, try and elevate that sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this is a sunnah to make a person smile, and not only a person but your wife smile occasionally, maybe not all the time, but occasionally make your wife smile. This will bring love and compassion between, and this will create a harmonious home. Sometimes husbands don't want to go back to their houses because their women will be nagging and moaning and so on and so forth. And sometimes the wife dreads the husband to come back to the house because he becomes a Hulk, he becomes a monster, he becomes a very demanding. Where's my food? Too much salt in my food, too much sugar in my food. You've left a crease in my thobe. You haven't ironed it properly, right? Why hasn't this been tidied, right? So many things. The Prophet Muhammad, when once he came inside the house and he said, "What is there for to eat?" And Aisha said, "Nothing." He said, "That's why I'm fasting." He did not complain. This is how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to practice and preach. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.